Greetings viewers, I'm back, and my apologies, I lied to you. However, it's for good reason. As you can see, the model in front of you is not assembled and ready for priming / painting. There's a reason for that. Also, as you can see, he is not pinned yet. While I was cutting the model out and trimming all the mold lines and checking the instructions to see how this thing goes together, it's actually kind of like a little puzzle to get it together. So for example, these are the two main leg halves of the model, and they go together as so, which is great. However, I have to get this piece in there. While these two pieces are assembled, I can't get that in there, so I have to finagle this in before I snap that together. Well, that's not that significant as far as the pinning goes. The problem with the pinning is similar. Once the two halves are put together, I cannot get this leg in here without breaking apart what I've already glued, so this has to be inserted all at one time. So the problem is, if I just drill willy-nilly into the foot, it's kind of a twofold issue. So for example, as you can see, there's a split running down here. So if I were to simply come up from the bottom of the base and go in here, let's say I had a dead center hit. I catch this right here on the seam, there's a possibility that drilling it could separate this. And that's not really going to do me a whole lot of good, and that's going to cause problems. The other issue is if I manage to get a dead center hit on either half here, take this off one day, there we go. The inside of this model's leg, this is hollow in here. So even if I manage to drill perfectly and come in here and glue it, well, there's not really anything for this paper clip to grab onto. So, easier to demonstrate on this side. What I did was, in my normal fashion of having to over-engineer / overcomplicate basically everything that I do, I drilled into one half of the foot. This was all no easy task by yourself, by the way, trying to hold the entire model together with one hand and use the drill with the other. So I came through here, followed this cavity, and actually went until I hit meat inside of his leg here. So now this goes in, and it's not necessarily super solid, but it's a lot better than being in here flopping around. So I now have multiple points of contact. And what my plans are is, as it sits like this, I'm going to slather super glue all over here, and then I can go ahead and slap the other part of the leg on here and get him closed up, and we'll be ready to go. Now, it's going to be a little weird having this giant paper clip sticking out of his foot. However, it may become helpful when it comes time to paint. I'll actually have something to grab onto so I can maneuver the model around and get to it, or even just hang it on something to dry so I'm not having to set it down since it's not going to be based. So that portion is done there. So the rest of it with the base where he stands, so again, this leg is going to be over here. Obviously those two holes right there are going to line up. The paper clip is going to come up through the base into the leg, which is all fine and dandy. The second leg on the other side is going to stand on top of this thing where you can see the holes are. Yes, first hole I tried didn't work out too well, but I stopped before I punched all the way through, and his foot's going to cover it, so that'll be fine. The problem is the underside of this thing is hollow. So I had to stuff some green stuff in there, and once this is all nice and completely hardened, I'm going to go back with my drill from this end, drill all the way through. So once this goes through there into his foot, into his leg, I can cut it off flush, so I at least have this much point of contact instead of the same thing as the leg where it just goes for here and then the rest of it's flopping around. And I don't want it sticking out past that while it's sitting here on the base, because yeah, it might look like a piece of rebar coming out, but there's already enough detailed bits of it doing that here that I don't see a need for having just a random piece coming out of a random pillar. I don't think that would look very good. So that is the reason why this model is not assembled before you. However, now that I've taken you along the woes of my pinning journey here, I can go ahead and get him painted, I can go ahead and get him assembled and ready to prime and paint for you guys, so I can stop yammering and showing you a bunch of gray plastic that you're probably not here to see. So just a quick update, and through the magic of video editing, you will see the model appear before you like that. Hey, cool, it worked. So as you can see, the model is complete, and holy cow, there is a lot of details and a lot of layers to this thing. And quite honestly, it's going to be a little difficult to get in some of these spots, like up in here, underneath here, without kind of like slopping paint everywhere and trying to make sure I keep everything color coordinated appropriately. I had a little bit of an issue. As you can see right here, where this little dimple is, that thing is actually supposed to be in here. I'm not sure why it wouldn't line up properly, but that kind of gave me some fits when it came to attaching this cable, because the ends weren't where they were supposed to be based on that. So I had to kind of bend it a little bit and hold it forever until the super glue dried and got it. But overall, it's done, it's assembled, and he's ready for priming. The paper clips work perfectly. There's enough super glue in here to basically ensure that this thing does not come apart without some major force. So the next step is going to be priming this thing and then getting him base coated. And my original idea, I was just going to do all of his armor in basic, like regular metal color without any kind of paint. But looking at how many different layers there are and trying to coordinate, making sure that I don't overdo one color over another, and then kind of thinking that maybe they're using like repurposed heavy-duty equipment. I figured a lot of the equipment you see out there is yellow, so I found some of this, and I think I'm going to go ahead and do all of his armor in kind of a yellow color. I've seen a couple different couple different variations of this model that people have done and colored yellow similarly, and I like the way they turned out. And like I said, I feel like they would have reappropriated some heavy-duty equipment to fashion their stuff out of. So I think that'll look pretty good. And then things like all the metal bits that are just bolted on maybe can be different metal colors. And then obviously we have other things like the exhaust stack coming out of his backpack we can kind of mess with and use different metal colors. But I think the primary color of the armor is going to be yellow. And I also have some of this that I got, I think I'm going to use for his skin. So we'll see how that turns out. But before we can even get to that, we have to get this guy primed. So that'll be the next step, and then we'll move into base coating. All right, so this guy and his base are finally primed and ready for a base coat, which I was hoping to do in this episode. However, I think I'm gonna save it for the next one because it's already taken long enough to get here and get the videos filmed and get the model caught up and processed in video between everything else going on. So I'm gonna save that for the next time. It did take a little bit of effort to make sure to get this guy fully primed. There's so many details on him and things that are kind of covered up and hidden, like I've mentioned before, and just trying to make sure that I get the primer down in those areas so paint will actually stick to it so it looks semi-decent when it's painted. Kind of took a little bit of time and effort making sure that I didn't make a huge mess with the primer. If you have any questions on priming models, I do have a video available that in my beginner series. Since I have that, I didn't want to bore you guys with doing it here, so I was just hoping we could get to the painting quickly, which again we will start in the next episode. I'll probably prime up with one of the sprues that came with this guy and try out some colors, and we'll look at it and the different techniques that maybe I want to try on some of the armor for weathering and detailing, so we'll see how that comes out. But for now, this is going to be it, and we'll see you in the next episode. I do appreciate your patience and your viewership. Thanks, and I hope you guys have a great day.